Ugh.
So this is where it starts to get a little bit fun. So get your brains in action. I hope they're not too tired.
Uh,
So the strategy I have if we look at this world or this system as a game in a way that it has rules, there's people that come and play, and there's stuff that happens. Um, yeah. So the strategy I'm coming up with is, look, like we've figured out that these systems are kind of powerful, right? They do what we want in a way. Like the whole point is you have a problem, and you construct one of these games that are able to, you give it some. You have these different elements and these different things. If we design it in a certain way, ideally, it can transform like people. So the goal you might say is like, look, we want if 50% of the world is a certain way, maybe if we make a 1% change in some metric, people are feeling a little bit better about themselves or whatever. 1% is already like 80 million people. If we can do that, like maybe that's already worth it. Like maybe that's something that's feasible. So that's yes, that's like the idea of the strategy behind it, and the abstract solution that I've come up with is, look, let's build a game in the game that figures out how to solve the problem and then solves it, because I don't know how to first of all, like I don't know how to figure out, I don't know the problem and understand it fully, and you only can solve it once you've figured it out. And this it's kind of different than what a lot of people do, right? Like a lot of people, if they start, if you look how America was started, they have this constitution and these rules and they set up, and even a lot of the cryptocurrency projects, they have like these principles, but they don't have a way in there to change these sort of principles. So the game is sort of set at the beginning and it runs, but it doesn't, that assumes that they've figured out and understood the problem and that their solution will be the correct one. But it's almost impossible if you look at how complex all this stuff is. So it's kind of like, look, let's make sure we leave a door in there to actually update the game itself. So it's a game that the rules evolve over time.
so the thing is that who is playing the game, he can like figure it out. There is a problem, and then he can like try to change the rules.
um, well, that's like you're touching on an interesting point, which is like a lot of people don't even know that they're in a game and that they can do whatever they want. That this, like you don't have to pay your taxes. You don't have to go to work. Like we tell ourselves this, but we actually have options. You can go to the forest and live there if you feel like doing that, and just plant some food, and like you don't have to decide to play with all these rules. Like the reason why we do is we're so motivated by our social connections and the people around us that's what we fear missing out on. And most of it, our friends and family also buy into this game thing. So we're like, look, I don't want to be the only one who's not playing. So this is why it's a very good tactic. I know a lot of people as well who see the issues with the world, but they're like, hey, I don't want to go to a communion on my own. I don't want to leave like the rest of my friends behind, but they don't know how to make a change in the world. They try, but it turns out to be kind of violent. If you look at these rallies and um, it doesn't seem to, or what do you call them? Like government takeovers and things like. Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah, like they haven't really figured it out yet. Their solution that they're trying to implement is just some random idea that they had, and is that going to be the correct thing? Probably not. Like we looked at, like we're starting to get a feeling maybe now for systems. If we look at that game of life example, all of those crazy interactions, they might see one part that's broken and wrong, but they neglect to see like the whole thing and how it's all buzzing around and changing. And if you get stuck in just this one little area that's working a certain way, you'll change that and that will have ripple effects and change everything else, but not as how you intended it. If you look at the monetary policy, like it's so law, like it's so complex. And if you change one, like people are like, yeah, this thing needs to change. This will make it better. Or we should print a bit more money for this, whatever it is. Like it doesn't really matter. But this one rule, it's impossible to tell all of the effects that that's going to have on the rest of the system. And this is because we're not fixing things in the correct way. Like we're not looking at the system level. We're looking at the output level. And so one thing you notice is a game, like the ideal game that solves problems is the game in a game. And the second game is also a game that we're going to make many games in that game because we don't know, the correct game to play. So these games like spread out infinitely, and this is sort of like evolution. Like there's all these different humans trying, like the cells mutate in different ways, or um, like ideally when I'm building up this organization, this is what part of the experiment is like, look, let's give people tools to be self-actualized and to know how to operate and behave in the world, full power and autonomy to do what they want. And let's see what happens. And so that's like one game I'm playing, right? Of like, let's try that out, and depending on the results of that, we tweak the game. So now we're getting into like, how do you, like the designer, we're putting our designer hats on and trying to make a game that will change things. And this is why it's kind of hard to explain so shortly and succinctly what this project's about, because there's all these different facets to it. But yeah, and ideally other people start their own games, right? They're like, look, I'm interested in that, or I see that issue, so let me, instead of just coming up with a solution saying, here, that's the answer, like what a lot of people do, yeah, we start collaborating together and learning from each other's failures and knowledge, and then implementing these different, yeah, like experiments in a way, these systems to learn more. And if one system turns out like, well, that's unhealthy, that's not going well, then we cut that off. We stop doing that, and then we put more resources into the healthy branch that's growing. And you do that infinitely. So the reason why, yeah, it's inherent. There is a bit of complexity in this. So anyone who tells you that the solution of this is like easy, like, or it's kind of, it's not really possible, especially because of this recursive nature. If you only can look at like a certain chunk, but it sort of iterates indefinitely. So we'll never stop having, as time goes on, like we'll never stop as long as life exists, like interacting and with certain rules and principles, and how that develops. It's evolution essentially, right? But as we're sort of using this as a tool for ourselves to build systems that we interact with that give us humans like power and ability to collaborate. Um, and yeah, this recursive nature is like this idea that the game isn't a game, and that element, the game, is also part of that equation. So like the definition just doesn't stop, and it depends. Yeah, the game, our system depends on itself to work. Like we're going to build it that way. And so yeah, sort of just splitting, making the work streams here a little bit more concrete of what plant like focusing on right now. So one part is this designer part, so creating the organization. And this designer part is also like me making a system, or us, or the company or organization making a system is also considered a game. Because we also have a goal and an output and an effect we want to have, and on the game itself. So we're running a system to create systems. And it's kind of it's a bit like wacky on the head, but I feel like this is the way that nature works, and the way that if we want to get a good outcome, this is how we have to look at it. And the second part is actually the game itself that we want. So we actually have a game that we all want to play, where people are more loving to each other, and after playing it, we walk away and we're like, we have a bit more skill, we're a bit smarter about the world, or we learn something. Yeah, and because it's a game, it also needs to have the fact that this idea of recursion and updating and experimentation. At the bottom, you sort of have you cannot put that into like one linear sentence so it makes sense, but it reads something like, create the game, which will create the game, and the game like creates games, which, but all of those do it. It's not like a linear thing. It's like a tree, right? Like all of those do that. It's like this, what do you call it? Like hyper-dimensional thing. um, so some sort of interesting things that come out of like looking at that nature of the world and systems is that there's always something to do. There's always work to be done, which is like, yeah, as long as we live and life goes on like this, there's always some change or something happening. And yeah, and there's no point then to ever like to see work as having an end goal or being finished, or like there's an end to any of this, because will never never end. You never get the perfect system, or you once you do, like you experiment a bit too much and you start going the other way, and then so it'll be like a squiggle all the time, you know. And maybe at a certain point, people just sort of get bored, or like something happens, right? And then you get off. And if you look at evolution, this is exactly what happens. Certain streams of life can fall off completely because of some adaptation that happened in the environment. Other ones start to thrive, then so on and so forth. So yeah, just some ideas that come out of this is like, yeah, just enjoy the moment while you got it, because it's going to last forever, and there's no point to be thinking about thinking about some point off in the future, or getting something finished or task done, when all that matters is the here and now. Roll the phi table video, please. Yeah, so systems, the universe is a system, actually, if you look at the definition of system. See, if you look at the definition of system, it's like, you know, universe, everything. And physics is this exploration of the universe. And so we can, again, I'm trying to give you a little bit of a sense of systems and why we care about them, and why I believe anything you do, actually, like Niels is in the health and mental health and physical health department, and he's also come onto this systems approach and way of dealing with things. A lot of people have. If you look at artists, like, you can also do procedural generative art, and you can do a lot of interesting things with that. Programming, like if you want to build good products and good things like this, not following a rule-based approach. Even people are discovering agile, which is following part of this methodology of iteration, but it's sort of the opposite of what came before it, which is waterfall upfront design. But as we can see here, there is a design phase to this product. There is a need to sit down. I've been sitting down and giving myself quiet time the last couple of months, like intensely, to try and figure this stuff out. There's a huge planning phase to looking and so on. It's not just going ahead and, yeah, like agile, like we do a little bit of planning, but we mainly just, we test the market and see what happens. And you end up with half solutions that are a bit better than maybe just planning everything up front. But yeah, it's like a mixture of these two ideas, planning as well as iteration and experimentation. And just, yeah, you can start to get an intuitive sense of understanding. Some things you can't put into words, like you can only experience it. You might not be able to say how you, I don't know, speak so well, or like some, yeah, like certain understandings are important because they give you power and ability to do things, but you cannot explain them. Again, that idea I was talking about before, and systems are often like this. So let's look at some cool examples in the realm of physics. Who wants, I have a bunch of different ones. There's a fire table, there's water, there's like, they're all fucking pretty cool. I'll show them briefly, because these, I don't know, I find this stuff so fascinating. So this is like some sound being played at a specific frequency that's making the water change, like how it's flowing. And it gets, when you change the frequency, like up or down, like different stuff, really cool stuff starts to happen. Just watch. And it gets trippy when the reverse effect happens. It's like so weird.
Whoa.
Don't tell me that's not cool.
It's really cool, man. It's like it's going upward.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Get it.
So this is like, if you looked at just one of these phenomena and tried to talk about a rule for how to, make this work better or change, like, you only have a certain amount of magic or power in your spells that you can cast. But once you start to know, like, water works like that, sound works like this, they interact in this manner, you see it as a system, right? It changes over time like this. You start to write down those rules and understand them. All of a sudden, you can understand, well, if I change the temperature of the water, that changes this thing. And if I change the sound in that way, like, then you start to be able to do very creative, amazing things with water that before were not, you start to get power essentially. And I keep using the word power, and I realize I haven't talked formally about what that means. And in the physics sense, it's like the ability to do, I think it's the rate of ability to do work. And I think intuitively, I mean, if you think it like at a gym or something, right? Like the ability to lift a weight. If I can lift a weight in 1 second, you can lift that same weight twice as fast. Like it's let's not say better, but you have more power. So depending on what we're trying to do, in putting more love into the world, right? There could be a million ways to make a system that does this, but one might take a billion years. One might take 10 days. Or if you look at the healing of the body, one method might take, yeah. So this idea of power is like, it's valuable because even if we don't understand it, it gives us the ability to do things that we want at a quicker rate. And that's cool. This one is so sick. So this is also like air from sound coming through and interacting and resonating, which is then, doing things with fire. And it's just, I'll skip forward to a bit. I think they're explaining it. Let's just take a look. So this is just the air from the sound going into the system and interacting with these different parts of the rules, right? And of the universe, and out comes this fire that freaking dances and just doesn't burn and sit there, right? It's like, that's freaking pretty cool. And this is for the purpose of art, but I can imagine in the future, the more we start going down this road, the amount of things we can start to build and our ability to harness nature as well will probably change very drastically than how we're using it today. Here's another exploration of certain laws, and it's it's a bit different than the other videos, but
I'm sometimes asked, why am I sort of so intrigued with spirals? What is it about spirals? And I think part of the answer is that I just find them beautiful. But I think spirals also make reference to the fact that you can never return to the same place again, that nothing ever does truly repeat. It goes infinitely small and it goes infinitely large. It's endless. And we sort of don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're going, and we're just sort of this, this piece of that larger picture. Spiral geometry. The first thing I do is I have to create the structure for it. If the frames aren't.
This is, they reference a lot as well, like how we see a lot of these things in nature, right? Like nature follows these patterns of growth as well, like trees. And it's fascinating that if you definitely watch these videos, this guy makes some really cool stuff. And so once you start to understand different laws of nature and systems and how they interact, like certain designs that he makes, let's see if we can see something. Like they work in ways where you wouldn't be able to come up with that on your own, that it works like that. He's just sort of using these rules and using that to create
never changed
really
shape.
awesome
it just
art.
Changed in scale as you added or removed pieces. And that then led to the notion of stacking these one on top of the other and rotating them relative to each other to cause these patterns to appear in the form of sort of plateaus that could move up and down the tower. And I'm rotating it each time. I'm rotating it at 137.5 degrees, the golden angle, which is based on the golden ratio. The golden ratio is the ratio where the smaller is to the larger as the larger.
Yeah, there's a couple of, I don't know, there's a couple of examples where he...
And when I animated it, I was surprised to discover that not only did it show plateaus appearing and disappearing, but there was this very strong sense of continuity of the plateaus moving down the tower or up the tower. About 5 years later, I suddenly realized, oh, what if I just keep on rotating the entire tower, not just the next level? And in fact, blooms are a direct descendant of a multi-year long sequence of explorations on these golden angle spiral.
So yeah, I'm just like, there's something really interesting to be said about all of this. I don't know what it is, but it's like, this is where the inspiration is coming from to build a solution to this problem in this way. Yeah, so here are some examples of systems, and like they're everywhere. Like everything seems to be a system, the whole universe, us, ourselves, the financial system, organizations, government, companies, family, friends groups, social circles. So yeah, understanding systems, being able to have like an intuition for how they operate and what they do, and also helps us first of all to understand ourselves, which seems to be something good, and our interactions with other people and our families. And so it generally just seems like a good thing to know about, especially if, again, I think a lot of people are here because they want to make change, but there's a lot of people also who are greedy, right? Like I want to make money in the financial system or whatever. Like understanding systems is like anything sort of becomes possible when you start to look at something as a system. You see why is it flowing that way? Or even in a communication with a person, why are they saying these things? Okay, he's at this place in his life, he's had that sort of experience. He's like, it gets a little bit, humans are kind of complicated, but you do start to get quite a good intuition of how you should behave so that you can move forward in the world in a way that is suitable for you, instead of being rocked around now in an unknown way, let's say, and bumping around and like stumbling. So some observations from these videos is that the output of a system, so what it will do is kind of almost impossible to predict, even though the rules are very quickly. And things like software, games, visualizations are very great ways to learn about these. So not some certain understanding, as I was mentioning, you cannot just, I don't know, like you can't read how to learn martial arts, or it can be useful. It can be useful to listen to me talk about systems, but I can imagine building video games, or not just video games, but different ways for people to interact as learning materials to start to get intuition about, let's say, economics. There could be a game based around some, like a literal game, like not just system game, but a literal game, a card game that you make based on, okay, like we have money, and money, let's assume that money might work in this way now because we believe people want to cooperate together, or they want to be part of a group, and so on. So you could take these ideas, write those rules down and the implications into a real game, sit down and play with people. How do you feel when that person did that to you? Do you feel cheated? Do you feel happy or loved? Or, and you could also do that as a video game and tweak the rules. Other ideas are, if people are familiar with like machine learning or artificial intelligence, a machine that, or a software that essentially that also updates, a system that updates itself and learns. So you can run these things, thousands of times per second against each other and test out different ideas and see, oh, that idea always seems to work, or that one doesn't. And so we're living in this amazing age now where we have ability to create a new system for us as human beings that is not just, I don't know, we have a lot of tools to have a really good shot at making something freaking awesome that makes us just like, so we can go back to living and enjoying ourselves and not like, I don't know, suffering all the time and being pissed off about work or whatever it is, like other people, like the sadness in the world, like just all of these like stuff that's just like we have to deal with constantly. I'll go over this briefly. So my sort of process of going about or learning about this sort of stuff was like, first of all, like ramping up my learning skills. Like I didn't know I was doing that, but I think, yeah, as Marika said, just using that muscle, right, of like thinking and analyzing. And so also video games is a great one. I think I already mentioned Jonathan Blow and his puzzle solving games. like Braid was the one I talked about first, about the warning to humanity, and that's a puzzle solving game. And he also has another one, puzzle solving game. And I think these are absolutely masterful art, like just awesome in so many different dimensionalities. Like I won't go into them now, but most people these days don't have the, they sit down and play a game, they expect to get an adrenaline rush, and they don't have they're missing the skill set or the knowledge to sit down and to put their brain to work. And even a good developer friend of mine who thinks a lot every day, you sat down after 10 minutes, he's like, nah, I'm just going to play some shooting stuff and, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just, we don't value knowledge. We don't value people's problem solving and actually thinking. And yeah, it's kind of, I wouldn't say that we haven't been rewarded for doing that. Again, after you exit school or in the workplace and so on, it's rare to really find opportunities where you can learn whatever it is that you want to. Like Neil said, he's interested in so many things, and I've been doing that recently now as well. It's very new, just physics, maths, computer science, religion, economics, anything that just like I'm interested in, I'll go and read up and learn about it. And cooking, like it's so amazing to have that curiosity again, like that. It seems to be a very natural state of, as Marika said, it gets pushed out of us by the system. It feels much more natural to learn in this way. And this is also a principle or idea that I'm thinking to incorporate into the design and building of this. I haven't talked too much about the specifics, and I think that's going to come another time because there's a lot of specifics. Right now, I'm just talking very abstractly, and I think that's also important to get everyone on the same page first on that level. But there will be specifics that are coming of like how I do plan on doing this stuff. Whew. Okay, this is like just dragging on. We're getting there. We're getting there to the end. So in terms of designing a game, there's certain things that you might want, or like we want these outcomes, or and these are some, like there's the technical requirements that I care about. So I don't want to fix effects. I want to fix the causes of things, because this is like what will be long lasting. This is what actually matters. I care about having power in the system. So I care about how long it takes for, I don't want the one that something that works, but it takes, years, or I have to put like the whole universe's energy into it to make it work. I want something that actually is usable and fast, or whatever it is, like powerful. I want the ability to change it. And I want it to be simple. And does anyone want to have a guess at what the most important system property of a game should be? It's kind of obvious. Let's say that. Like, why do you play games? Why do people play games?
Fun.
No, it's like the interact.
Got it.
I would like simplest explanation.
Yeah, well, so you do interact in a game, but yeah, like fun, right? Like, what do we want? That was one of the first slides. What do we want? It's like we want to enjoy ourselves, and again, through interaction we have enjoyment and entertainment and fun. Are you having fun right now? I hope so. This is about that point of like fun. This is why this is here. Like, are we having fun? I don't know. I don't know everyone's background. I don't know the people who are going to watch this. Maybe some people are not. So this one is for you if you're not having fun.
We don't have to, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go on living. But it's a great idea. It's a great thing if you can learn what the Chinese call purposelessness. They think nature is purposeless. When we say something's purposeless, that's put down. No future in it. It's a washout. But when they hear the word purposeless, they think that's just great. When Chinese say nature is purposeless, this is a compliment. It's like watching wild geese fly and be hidden in the clouds. As watching a ship vanish behind a distant island. As wandering on and on in a great forest with no thought of return. Haven't you done this? Haven't you gone on a walk with no particular purpose in mind? Carry a stick with you and you occasionally hit at old stumps and wander along and sometimes twiddle your thumbs. It's at that moment you learn purposelessness. All music is purposeless. Is music getting somewhere? If it were, if the aim of music were, of a symphony, were to get to the final bar, the best conductor would be the one who got there fastest. It's like the waves washing against the shore, going on and on and on forever with no meaning. Well, it's exactly the same with our life. We think life has a purpose. Like the birds in the trees go, twee, 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 twee. What's it all about? Everybody tries to say, it's a mating call. It's purposeful. Trying to get their mate, attract them with a song. That's why they have colors. Butterflies have eyes on them. Self-protection. Engineering view of the universe. Why do that? They say, well, it's because they need to survive. Well, why survive? What's that for? Well, to survive. And they say, well, that's terribly serious. Awfully important. We've got to keep on doing this. See, dancing, when you dance, do you aim to arrive at a particular place on the floor? The aim of dancing is to dance. Here's the choice then. Are you going to trust it or not? I must trust myself to a nature which doesn't have a boss.
I can recommend people to listen to Watts, who just he will help you a lot. This idea of like surviving to survive. And this is a big problem in a lot of people's systems. If you look at, they instead of the exploration for the sake of exploration and coming back and having another goal that it contributes and allowing yourself to die off when it makes sense. Like this idea is not good, we let it go. This self-preservation or like surviving, I need to survive. It takes energy, it takes effort, it takes resources, it takes planning. That takes away things like power and simplicity and all of these other things that we care about. And what happens now as well is if a new idea comes along that's actually better, the self-surviving part may start killing off these other parts. And you see, if you look at the political, what's happening right now with Donald Trump, or a couple while back, right? Like he is in the self-survival state where instead of letting go and look, that's what happened and there's something else that's coming in now that these people want and so on. It's this fighting that comes in and trying to clutch back, and that causes harm to the whole. And this is why I think cooperation it's also to do with cooperation, also with ourselves. Like, look, you're gonna die one day. So if you try and fight that and spend energy trying to increase your likelihood to you should be healthy and so on, but in a way that is with your natural flow and not out of like fighting a fear of death because you're spending energy now on something that's futile. I know I'm like bouncing around here with these things, but you can sort of get an idea of why it's good in the system that I'm designing. Like I don't want to have any absolutes. It's like you allow for things to change and to update, and it's okay that parts of the system die off. And a lot of systems, and the belief is as well, like I've read a couple, I started reading one book on systems, which was very good, but it was talking about that systems are self-preserving. And the ones that we see in the world seem to be that way, but I believe when you take a higher look at it, actually they're not self-preserving. Like they die off for a purpose. Like when the time is right, like they don't unnecessarily cling to their existence all the time. So yeah, let's just quickly dig into the little properties I cared about a little bit, so that's clear why they're important. So this one started becoming apparent to me when I was getting curious about the body, because I had a bad ankle, and then I hurt it during squash. I was hurting for like a long time, and as I go to the doctor, and she says, "Hey, put this slip thing in your shoe," and like intuitively, I'm like, "This is not gonna." This is not going to do anything, like it was kind of obvious to see. And in other examples where it's more complicated, let's say someone gives you a pill, right? You're like, I'm not doing well, I'm feeling a bit depressed, I take this pill. And it's like, do people really understand the whole system and you and your background, the context in that 2 minutes that they took to talk to you? Is this pill specifically designed for your situation? It's a rule as well. Someone says they're depressive, give them that pill. And so I was not acceptable with that answer. And that's what drove me to go to this gym, because I remember the people there a little bit different. Intuitively, they seem to be creative and curious about the body and small groups and like really giving you more knowledge. And so I went to the gym and slowly through time, right, starting to learn a lot more about the body. And there's this fascinating thing that happens, which is like, if, like, for instance, certain people have certain problems with their feet, they may even think it's genetic because their parents also had them. And that's also another interesting point, like how we learn, right? We look at our parents, how they walk and move, or others around us, and we learn that behavior. And we think, oh, this pain I'm having, or it's just the way I am, and not realizing it's a learned behavior that took years and years to develop into that way, to manifest the problem.
Also with the mentality problem too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Like,
not just physical, also mental. Yeah.
like, did you ever watch the Kung Fu Panda, that movie, that Kung Fu Panda thing?
Yeah.
There's a certain part of that I really like that Panda's father, he was the cook, like he used to cook that ramen thing, and it's really delicious. And everyone knows like he adds some sauces or something that's special and secret. Because of that, it makes delicious. But in the end of the movie, he mentioned that there are no secret sauce. It's just I put the normal sauce and tell people it's a secret sauce, and they think it's because of the secret sauce. It's so tasty, but it's the same thing. So it's happening in our society too. Like, there are a lot of things that mentally said, because of that we are like bound to it. Like, we don't think out of the box or out of that thing.
Sure, definitely. That's a huge part. Like all of this thinking sort of stuff and feeling stuff. Like, I'm gonna do a deep dive into that in a bit later. Yeah. But just to make that point here clear, as I digressed, unfortunately, I rambled again. But so if you have a problem in your foot, that'll actually, or a toe even, like that'll manifest into pain. Like your ankle, you'll start to compensate by using your ankle differently, which will then cause you to use your knee differently, and then the hip and the back and the neck. And so you may end up, first of all, the neck gives out because you sit on the computer all day and it's not as strong or whatever. And so you go to the doctor and you get a massage for your neck, but the neck is not the problem, it's the foot or the toe. So you should learn to train the foot to walk properly. And the rest of those things, what might happen as well is now the system has to come back into alignment slowly, right? Like if you have the expectation it's going to get better magically because you take a pill, it's unrealistic. It may have taken you years of adaptation to this bad pattern, so it may take years to get back as well, depending on the amount of power, the method, like the system that you're using to help you, and how often you're using it, and blah blah blah. So with the example, when you start adapting back, you start using your feet correctly. Now the ankle has to start, has different forces that come on. It's going to need time to start adapting. So you may get pain, but it's important to understand all of this. So you're not like, oh, it hurts, I'll stop. Oh, it's bad, I'll stop. Like, I'll just take the pills again. It makes the pain go away. So this is a very naive understanding of everything, systems, pain. So the shoe and lay is not a good solution. This is why we care about the cause. And a cool thing when you start to do that is you get permanency in your solutions. So after you solve a problem in this way, it shouldn't show up again unless something else reintroduced it. So that's kind of powerful. As a programmer, I've had a lot of experience dealing with systems, like building complicated computer programs where people work together. Some of them are very new, some of them are very old. And you start to realize very interesting things, right? Certain people, a lot of also beliefs about it. The fact that one bug reappears every couple months or whatever, or like we can't get rid of it, and this is the way it has to be, and it's always been like that. You see a lot of these patterns come up. So you can this is a very interesting point. If you look at a system and just you yourself, take you yourself as an example and start to work on that, you can start to learn about all other systems because they all follow similar rules. Yes, so yeah, so ideally the system should not be dependent on the solution involved. Otherwise, it's like a recursion there that happens. So you always have to keep revisiting the solution. And the solution, if it's a static thing that doesn't update itself, you'll be dependent on that forever. So yes, we don't want to be taking pills for years. We see that in the world. That's the standard for many people. They're, yep, I have to be taking these diabetic or whatever blood things for the rest of my life. Like that's the best that we offer. The modern health, like we see this in so many different areas. In programming, we don't try and sit down and find the real bug. We just say, look, it's okay. We go back there. The way we build products, we just tell our users, no, it's fine. You made that mistake, but just go and do this thing and that manual thing and it'll be fine. Like we don't actually go back and fix and make the thing run beautifully smooth. The next one is power. So yeah, the higher the power, the faster the rate of change. So this is something we can measure, right? If we start, there's a lot of people who don't get help in therapy. There's a lot of, yes, with certain issues, or it's sort of seen as these people leave therapy, or we don't have much success with them. And I believe there's a lot of room for improvement in this area. It'd be very interesting to measure, and it'll be quite easy to do. I think, like if we're able to work with people who previously were not were seen as like lost cases or like a very low success rate, and we can show, hey, look, these methodologies and this way of treating each other and or being a part of the system that we're creating has these effects on people. Instead of taking like 2 years, it took me 3 or 4 years of I did 2 years of therapy, but there's like a 4-year journey of like looking at myself. If I could do that in half the time, or like that's already a huge benefit. And yeah, I have some videos where I talk a bit, or I haven't uploaded them yet, but they talk a bit more about the different side effects of all this sort of stuff. Changeability. This is a fun one. So don't think of programming in terms of software, but just in terms of building any sort of a system or a game. Yeah. So this is like a joke in the programming community, or the software programming community. I always understand the problem fully and fix the root cause. Well, yeah, implement the solution in the fastest way possible, in the least amount of time required, delivering the most possible power, given all of the context and variables at hand. But all you other people, yeah, you're the ones who make the bugs. You're the ones who make the problems and the errors. So this is this huge thing. Like my code is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't make any mistakes. You make the mistakes. But if we understand systems, we realize that's like we're never going to get it right first time. So this ability to evolve it, to change it, is critical in the way that we build it. So we can do that. Because if we don't, it starts to impact the power, because we want to be able to do things quickly. If it takes a long time to make changes in the system, they eventually end up collapsing. If you look at government systems, software systems, even this is why Agile was developed, because the waterfall method wasn't proving good enough. This is why test-driven development, these different methodologies came around, because they wanted more change. They wanted the ability to make more changes quicker. I'm not saying that these things are the correct answer. These are, again, I think we need to be more conscious of what it is that we care about, what outputs and effects, and what tools we can use to get them, and not, we should use test-driven development to get that effect, because it's definitely not always the case. This is a cool sketch from XKCD. I love his work. So if anyone's watching this and you want to get be employed for a very long time, or I don't know, as long as software jobs are around, the financial system and the rest of that supports it, literally, you can, people will pay you to fix bugs. like, because they don't know that like everyone else, most majority of programmers are not very good, so they're all making bugs, and it's common to see bugs and mistakes, and even from the top companies, the websites go down. So people are like, oh yeah, as long as their business is ticking over a little bit, even though it's not squeaky clean, like we're happy to accept bugs. And as a programmer, hey, if I want, I can just make a bug myself that I know exists. Yeah, this is like just showing how bad things are. If I want, I could go make a bug that I know exists. In certain companies where the culture about quality and things like that isn't there, no one would really bat an eyelid that I'm spending more than half my time or 90% of my time fixing bugs because everyone else has built the system so crap and complicated. And so yeah, like literally I could do nothing and then just come in and fix that bug because I created it in like a second and be like, yeah, I fixed the bug. Customers like, good job. So it can be you'd be very exploitative in this environment. And if you apply that same thinking to the world we live in, the taxation, all of this sort of stuff, once you start to figure out these rules and how they work and how people are enslaved by them, you can start to use that to your advantage. And not even a bad way. Like it's the game. Yeah, it's you figured out a strategy to the game. It's not a good outcome. This isn't a good outcome for the world that you don't do anything productive with your time and get rewarded for it. But it's the current state of the system. So part of my I'm not going to talk about funding in here, but I'm looking at all of this stuff and I'm going to be exploiting the current rules of the system because it makes sense to do so, because I believe that by me exploiting them instead of them going to this whatever funds going to people who are probably just going to be doing more exploitation with that, I want to transform it into essentially it's like washing, right? But it's like the opposite of washing. It's not taking bad money and then putting it into this broken system. It's taking money out of the broken system and trying to put it into a system that actually works healthily. The next one, simplicity. A lot of people get that confused and think it's hard. And the reason why we care about simplicity is because something is simpler, it's easy for us to understand, it means it's easier for us to change, which means it's also related to power, which we have explained many times before we care about. The reason why simplicity is so hard is because, yeah, power is related to time and state, which is the whole environment, all the different variables and the things that can come into it. And so when you design for simplicity or using simplicity, it's like there's a certain amount of simplicity that is a good amount for that problem because it takes time to design and build in simplicity. So it's hard. It takes a long time to get a feeling for that. It's like an intuition that I've developed through like in coding, for instance. And I think a lot of artists will develop that. Right? I should experiment a bit here and there, whatever. And eventually, whatever, you have like a flow and a gut feeling of like when's too much time to be spending on that task and so on. You may not be able to put in words what you do, but you've experimented and realized, well, if I do way too much there, it doesn't work out good. And so this is this similar idea. And interesting question down here, like how much time for simplification should we take when trying to remove suffering from the world? So I believe that, yeah, because of this nature of the system to be self-updating and adapting, like ideally you can also make it more simple over time. And a lot of people like this idea in coding is called factoring, but a lot of, yeah, it's like essential to do this essentially. Otherwise you just end up with this huge mess, which is impossible to change. And there's interesting videos I can post about this phenomenon. And we see that as well, like try changing these existing systems, like by using the existing system, like try to change the law, like it's almost impossible to understand all of it, and or try to change the monetary policy or the government stuff. Like, so this is why the game thing is a good idea, because we're not tying ourselves to these external rules of the other game, but we're like, let's try and we're coming together and being like, look, let's do this off in secret and let's exploit this other system in a way, right? Like there's other people playing the game and we're going to make strategies that take it and transform it to start transforming the outside world. Like Rich Hickey has so many good videos. He's the creator of the Clojure programming language, and I think he's just like the way that the language design came out and so on. Like it hasn't really changed much in like the 10 years it's been out, or even longer now. And if you look at a lot of other programming languages, they don't have that same, they didn't have that design, that upfront design about them, and they don't have beautiful systems, so they grow into these huge spaghetti messes. If you look at things like C++ or even Python now, where it just keeps being added to and added to, and I haven't used Python for a while now. I don't want to. It's like, wow, it's just gotten so much more complicated, and there's more stuff to know, and they interact with each other in this way, and it's very beautiful when a system has this elegance to it and isn't more or less, and doesn't need to have these weird knobs on the side to fix other bugs that came in because you didn't think about that problem at the beginning, and so on. And just to point out another human aspect, right? Like letting go, the ability to let go of the fact that I know Python, to be able to let go of it, and or even if I created something, right, to be able to realize, look, I mean, I let go of that because it's not serving the purpose or the design or the solution as well as something else now. That's something a lot of, I think it comes back, it's similar. Yeah, it's exactly the same idea as the surviving thing on what was talking about, putting more energy into actually living and creating than just self-sustaining, even when there's no need to anymore. There's another better alternative. So yeah, this is all like very abstract. I know that. This like probably, I'm not sure how that comes across. If that's any clearer or less clear about what it is I'm doing. I was like, what are you doing? I tried to explain more like why and how I'm going along this process. Yeah. I didn't get time to fill these out, and I think we've been going long enough. So just maybe leave it here. This is like all ongoing stuff that's being worked on right now. Yeah. Here's some additional resources. Good book on thinking in systems. Yeah, Jonathan Blow has a great talk about preventing the collapse of civilization, where he looks a lot about how the programmers and a lot of technology as well, and what's happened to that in the past. Eric Fromm has a lot of ideas about being and loving, which is, yeah, again, I don't agree with everything he says, or about also thinking in systems. I don't agree with everything in there, but they're definitely good resources for learning and questioning. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? So yeah, I think I will be doing more videos that go more into concrete things in the future, but just, yeah, not today. But if anyone wants to ask anything about concrete specific things, or about, I would prefer that we ask questions more about what was discussed today, but nope.
You covered a lot of things, so I don't have any specific questions, I don't think, but just a lot to think about.
It will take some time to digest all the things and then come up with the questions. And you already recorded all the things. Can you also send those recording?
Yeah, I'm gonna be. Ken is gonna be doing website. He's programming. Well, we're in the stages of like finalizing our agreement to work together, but I'm gonna have a place to put videos and links and more information and blog posts and videos. Like all of this stuff is coming. And yeah, I mean, I announced the NGO. It's not. I'm in the process as well of like working with lawyers to get this set up, and there's so much bureaucracy in Germany, so I don't know how many weeks this will take. But yeah, I guess I'll send out an email to everyone when there's a place that they can go to get the recording, or I can also send it out if you are interested. I can also email it to you afterwards, or put a link up somewhere.